Today, this is my first class. Today this is my fifth class. All of you will learn about. I think all of you have already completed 4 classes. One thing I want to say that you will prepare a question database. Every one of you will prepare an MCQ question database, which will consist of, say, 20 to 30 questions of cyber security. In case of any confusion, you can ask. What you will do, you will write in Google Sheet or Google Docs. Are you aware about Google Docs or not? If there is any problem,
yes, ma'am.
Okay. So those who are not able to use Google Sheets or Google Docs, they can get in touch with me or with their mentor or those who already know about the working of the form. What I want to say is that listen carefully. CR, you are present, Emily?
Yes, ma'am.
So listen carefully and convey this message to everyone.
Okay.
That all of you need to prepare a question bank. Maybe after 3 or 4 classes, what you will do, you will search Google and all of you will prepare question bank which will consist of, say, 30 questions from operating system, MCQ type questions. What you will do, you will prepare a Google Sheet. All of you will prepare Google Sheet separately. You will write the questions. For example, question number 1, what is the question? Then there are 4 options, A, B, C, D, and what is the correct option? Whether A or B or C, that you will write. Answer A. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Questions গুলো কি আমাদেরকে লিখতে হবে?
Question bank ki to prepare korte hobe. All of you need to prepare. What is the motive behind it? What is the motive behind preparing of question banks is that you will study different parts as the class progresses. Soon all of you will learn about the different types of modules in operating system, memory management, process management. All of you will learn. So what you need to do, all of you need to prepare a MCQ question bank which you will submit. All of you will submit MCQ question. Okay. So and how you will submit? You will write those question bank in Google Sheet and share the link with me. Question number 1.
ম্যাম ওই আপনি আপনি যতটা পড়িয়েছেন তার উপরে তো?
Not necessarily. তুমি পুরোটা operating system, you can go through the syllabus, you can search net, দেখে নিয়ে দেবে. No problem.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
Maybe I'll just make an announcement. Maybe after few class, after 3 or 4 class, you can prepare the question bank. But the motive behind preparing of question bank is that all of you will search Google and will get prepared about different subjects or different topics of operating system. At least by preparing MCQ, all of you will get prepared about what are the topics, what are the possible questions. All of you will learn about it. শুধু কোশ্চেনটা কিভাবে করবে সেটা বুঝে রাখো. Question, then ABCD, there are 4 options and answer. Which one is correct, A or B? Just write that. No need to write the full answer, only A and B is sufficient. Is it okay?
Ma'am, we have to write the subtitles also. মানে অপারেটিং সিস্টেমে সবকটা সাবটাইটেলসও লিখতে হবে, মানে একটা পার্টিকুলার শুধু পরপর কোশ্চেন গুলো লিখবো 30 কোশ্চেন
তার অ্যানসারস মানে question number 1 ABCD, there are 4 options that you will write and then answer. Suppose B is correct, then answer B or answer A, that you will write. Is it okay? All of you will write and share the drive link with me. Make it shareable. Some students, what they do, they don't make a shareable link. So make it shareable. সবাই করবে। And after completion, I will ask CR and NCR to keep track or to prepare a list of those students who has prepared, who has submitted this assignment, and those who have not submitted this assignment. Okay, this will be
Okay, ma'am.
considered as your assignment. So without wasting time, let us share my screen. Wait. My screen is visible or not?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
visible,
Your
ma'am.
screen is
Yes,
visible.
ma'am.
So today's lecture 5, process, context switch, process creation, cooperating processes. These are the different terminologies that we will learn. In the last class, although the last class was a little bit disturbed, but what I was trying to explain was the concept of process. What is a process? What is the definition of process? And what are the different parts of a process? What are those parts? Actually, what does a process control block is there? What are the component of process control block? This we have already studied. Like PCB, what was PCB? PCB is a data structure which is used by computer operating systems to store all the informations about a process. It is also known as a process descriptor. Like when a process is created, operating system creates a corresponding process control block. As soon as a process is created, it prepares a process control block. Does anyone have any idea about what is a process? And what is the difference between a process and a program? Does anyone have any idea? What is the difference between process and program? Anyone want to answer?
Ma'am, what is the question?
What is the difference between a process and a program? Both of them are same or they have different meanings? This is my question. Will anyone want to attempt? No. So I think every one of you knows what is a program. So a program is whenever you write a code, you write instructions which is executable, that we call a program. Now what is process? When you are writing a code, it is not a process, but whenever you execute that program, that is called a process. Whenever a program start executing, then the program is termed as a process. That is the concept, or that is the definition of process. Okay. Now let us see what is process context switch. You need to know the definition of context switch. Context switch and process context switch both are the same thing. When CPU switches to another process, the system must save the state of the old process and load the saved state for the new process. Then we called it context switching. Actually, what is the Meaning of switch. I think all of you know that meaning of switch means changing from one point to another point, changing from one place to another place. This is the concept or definition of switch. So context switch, what does it involve? It involves storing the context or state of a process so that it can be reloaded when required and execution can be resumed from the same point as earlier. This is a feature of a multitasking operating system and allows a CPU to be shared with multiple processors. So context switch occurs in case of multi-programming operating system. When there are more than one process which need CPU time, then context switching is required. But in context switching, what are the steps? The old process or the executing process state is saved and the new process gets executed. Suppose a process was running and it needed 20 minutes. After 5 minutes, context switch occurred. So what is the job of CPU? CPU must save the state of the process. Because suppose he is in the middle of a transaction, the process is in the middle of the transaction, and if that state is not saved, then all the important informations will get lost. So it is required to save the state of the old process. Context switch time is overhead. The system does useful work while switching. Switching means when switching or when changing from one process to another process. That is context switching. And why this time is overhead? Overhead means this is an extra burden or extra responsibility, you can say, because there must be some mechanism to save the state of the process, and again when the process resumes, then also he'll or then also it needed, that means switching is needed, and when the switching is done, the system does any useful work, and when the system does not do any useful work, then we can say that it is an overhead. Time dependent on hardware support. Context switch, how much time will be required to context switch is the part of hardware. Like if we consider the context switching category, then we can say that there are three major triggers or types for context switching. What are the types, we can say? In a multitasking, first one is for multitasking environment. When there are more than one task, then these problems can arise. In a multitasking environment, a process is switched out of the CPU to another process can be run. The state of the old process is saved and the data of the new process is, the state of the new process is proceeded. And what is the next feature of context switching? That is interrupt handling. What is interrupt handling? The hardware terminates a part of the context when an interrupt occurs. Anyone please give me the definition of interrupt. What do you mean by an interrupt? What is the definition of interrupt? Can anybody say? No. No one want to say. Interrupt means certain stopping of the program or software or even hard. In some cases hardware also. But whenever a process is executing due to some unavoidable condition, error or something, erupt or bit occurs. So context switch is time dependent on hardware support. It depends on the processor type also. Process creation. When the program starts executing, then it is referred to as process. What are the process creation, or we can say what is the process, what are the steps of process creation? The steps of process creation is it creates children processes, which in turn creates other processes, forming a tree of processes. Resource sharing. Parents and children share all resources. Children share subset of parents' resource. Parents and child share no resources. This is the steps of process creation. Address space, child duplicate of parent. If there is any child process, then we can refer, or we can say that child is duplicate, or child has a duplicate of parents. It is just a carbon copy, and child has a program loaded into it. Child also contains program. Maybe there are some new programs also. Unix example, fork system calls creates new process. And Unix example, fork system call creates new process. EXCC system call used after a fork to replace the process memory space with new diagram. So these are the two system calls which we have learned, fork and EXCC. Fork is for creation of new process, and EXCC is we call after a fork to replace the process memory share within a new program. Process creation and process termination both are important steps. Process executes last statement and asks the operating system to delete. Delete means exit. Technically, you can implement this as delete. Process resources are deallocated by operating system. Parents may terminate execution on children processes. That means parents may terminate execution of children processes. If a parent process wants, then he can revoke all the, we can say, the output of data from child to parent. It can be defined with this analogy also. Parents may track assign, or suppose if the I couldn't understand, I am speaking a one-sided speaking, I am giving just a speech, so all of you are listening or all of you have gone to sleep? Just switch on and no one is there and I am just speaking alone.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
শুনছি ম্যাম।
Good, good. যদি কোথাও ভুল মনে হয় না বুঝতে পারো জিজ্ঞেস করবে।
ওকে ম্যাম।
Okay, ma'am.
Parents may terminate execution of children processes. কি হবে? child has exceeded. There are certain cases when parent can terminate execution of child process. First is child has executed allocated resources. Suppose there is an execution or there is an allocation of child resources. So the child has exceeded allocated resource. Task assigned to child is no longer required. Suppose the child has been assigned a role, then that role is completed. So the child has been the child can die or the process can get terminated. If a parent is exiting, then also the child automatically dies. Some operating system don't allow child to continue if the parent terminates. All children terminated, that means there is a cascading termination. So cascading terminations means one after another. Then cooperating process. Independent process cannot affect or be affected by the execution of another process. There are some independent process and there are some cooperating process. We can also say they are dependent processes also. So independent process cannot affect or be affected by the execution of another process, and cooperating process can affect or be affected by the execution of another process. Advantages of process cooperation. What are the advantages of cooperating process? Information sharing, communication speed up, computation speed up. Why computation speed up? Because if there is one job and only one process is doing it, then it might require some time. But if there are more than one job and suppose more than one job is divided in more than one processes, two child process and one parent process, then the job will be able to finish fast. Then computation speed up, modularity, convenience. What is why modularity? Modularity is needed or modularity is ensured because the different processes work on different modules. So modularity is required or modularity is ensured. Now we come to producer-consumer problem. Producer-consumer problem is one of the famous problems of operating system. It's a paradigm for cooperating process. Producer processes or produces information that is consumed by a consumer process. So there are two processes. One is producer process and another is consumer process. The role of producer process is to produce information and consumed by consumer process. One is like sender and receiver. It can be understood with that analogy. So unbounded buffer places no practical limit on the size of the buffer. Bounded buffer assumes that there is a fixed buffer size. So here we assume that there is a fixed buffer size. Okay. Now let's go to inter-process communication. Go through what is being written. Inter-process communication. What is the definition of inter-process communication? And tell me if you have understood anything. By going through this definition, if any one of you have understood, or can someone make a gist about inter-process communications? Who will make? Shomik Pal, will you explain what is the in short? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain in short what you understood from this inter-process communication? I'm not asking in detail since I know this is a new topic. So in short,
Ma'am, it is a bit difficult for me now.
okay. So you have not understood by going through this. Okay. So can anyone want to explain anything? Mechanism for process to communicate and to synchronize their action. It is a mechanism for processes to communicate and synchronize their action. Message system, processes communicate with each other without resorting to shared variables. IPC facility provide two operations: send, that is message size fixed or variable; receive, message. If P and Q wish to communicate, they need to establish a communication link between them and exchange messages via send or receive. So these are the two operations, send and receive. If P and Q wish to communicate, they need to establish a communication link between them for exchanging a message via send or receive. Also, this is implementation of communication link. Physical. What is the example of physical? Shared memory, hardware, bus, and logical properties. Inter-process communication, or IPC, with an operating system can be defined as when there are processes executing concurrently in the operating system. They might be either independent process or cooperating process. Process is independent if it cannot be affected by the other processes executing in the system. Inter-process means when there are more than one process which are trying to exchange data or which are trying to communicate. Operating system, process communication or processes communicate when there is some information that needs to be transferred. There are numerous reasons for providing an environment or situations which allow process cooperation. Why is IPC needed, or process cooperation, inter-process communication needed? First point is, what is first point? First point is information and is computational speed. Third is modularity, then convenience. What do you mean by modularity? What is the purpose of modularity? What are the advantages of modularity? Can anyone explain? No answers from anyone. Whenever you have written the program in C also, then also the program you have written in module. Try to break the program in module. So what is the, why we prefer C? Because in C we can write the program or we can break the program in different modules. So that is the concept of inter-module or inter-processing, inter-process communication, or uh, different processes that appears. So implementation of communication links occurs. Now communication model. This is a communication model. Suppose process A and process B, there are different processes. And these are the different communications model. When processes interact with kernel, see, process M is interact with kernel, then process B interacting with kernel. Similarly, here also different processes, process A, process B, they are shared. They are sharing that some module is shared between process A and process B. Direct communication, process must name each other explicitly. How they name each other explicitly? By sending or by receiving. So send or receive. These are the two communication links.
Hello. হ্যালো।
ম্যাম মিউট করে রেখেছেন।
प्रॉब्लम হচ্ছে।
সরি,
मैम
একটা
आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया है।
কলেজ থেকে ফোন এসে গেছিল বলে মিউট করতে হবে। ঠিক আছে?
ओके मैम। हाँ हाँ।
Direct communication, process must name each other explicitly. This is the concept of process communication, where send and receive. That means send a message to process B, and receive means receive a message from process. These are the uh, parts of a process. Similarly, properties of communication links. Links are established automatically. A link is associated with exactly one pair of communicating process. That means only one link is associated with one pair of communicating process. Also, between each pair, there exists exactly one link. Remember this, that between two processes, there is only one pair. The link may be unidirectional, but is usually bidirectional. Since both way communication means both way. Indirect communication, messages are directed and received from mailboxes. These are indirect communication. When two persons are not communicating directly, but they are communicating indirectly with the help of mailbox. The properties of communication link. Link established only if process share a common mailbox. A link may be associated with many processes. Each pair of process may share several communication links. Links may be unidirectional or bidirectional. In case of indirect communication, remember this. These are the operation: creation of new mailbox, sending and receiving message through mailbox, destroy a mailbox. So what are the primitives? Two primitive, one is send and another is receive. These are the two primitives. Now synchronization. What is synchronization? Synchronization is again the process of synchronizing or the process of enhancing communication between a slow sender and fast receiver, or fast receiver and slow sender. Blocking is considered synchronous and non-blocking is considered asynchronous. Okay. These are the two concepts. Buffering. Queues of messages attached to the link. They are implemented in three ways: zero capacity, bounded capacity, and unbounded capacity. These are the three capacities of use for buffering. Client server communication, sockets, RPC, remote procedure call, and remote method invocation. I just go through these headings, and in later classes I will explain this in detail. Then this is socket. Socket is defined as endpoint for communication. Each and every machine is having a IP address. Remote procedure calls, abstract procedure call between process on network system. Okay. Thank you. Up to this, I have completed. RPC, remote procedure call, please remind me in the next class. I will explain it in detail because I need to cover the RPC in detail, because remote procedure call is important and all of you need to learn the concept of RPC.